Well, you know, if I'm here on a Friday evening, it's got to be important. Under normal circumstances, I'd have my feet kicked up, watching Friday Night Tights and laughing my butt off hysterically as my form of therapy to help me get through the madness that is current modern day political society. However, being the dedicated soul that I am, live streaming fool that I've become, I am here with you on a Friday evening talking about a ruling in Georgia regarding Fani Willis and Nathan Wade as handed down by Judge Scott McAfee. And for those of you who are looking at me wondering who I am, my name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to a very impromptu live stream where we are on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter talking about a ruling that came down about 9 o'clock this morning. So let me start dropping the volume on the music, say hello to some people, and we'll just get right into it. And let's see, I prefer to take a shoebox full of Benjis when I go on a business trip. It's a white thing. And how are you doing, Christ brings a sword? Don't hold back. Tell me what you really think of the situation. Let's see what else he's got to say. I need at least 20 grand to have a good time in the Bahamas. Yeah, man. I so understand that. Me and my Bahama mama. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just, yeah, well, look. I'm not going to, look, as a gentleman who needs to lose some weight himself, I'm not going to disparage her for her physical appearances. Her lack of brains and her lack of humility, I'll absolutely roast the woman for, but not for physical appearance. Hello, Miss Leah. Darling, you are gorgeous. Love you. Love you, baby. We're over on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We are on Twitter. And as y'all know, the big story of the day is that Judge Scott McAfee out of Fulton County has handed down his ruling on the question of disqualification, whether District Attorney Fani Willis and Special Assistant District Attorney Nathan Wade, again, who we refer to as Drama Mama and Lover Boy, ought to be thrown off the case. So I thought I'd come on here and give some thoughts about it, and also in part because I promised to do that when I gave my video update last night. And I've got various thoughts about this ruling, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it, and then what we don't finish here tonight, we'll talk about tomorrow on Front Porch Brunch. Now, let me start with the first thing that I have always said that I would do as your host. And this is true whether I was doing social media or whether I was in regular life or whatever. If I get something wrong, then I will be the first to come to you and say, I screwed it up. I got it wrong. And I kept telling everybody I fully expected this judge to throw both Fani and Nathan off this case. I got it wrong. I was wrong. I will admit I was wrong. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. The judge did not do what I expected. That said, however, there's a difference between what he should have done and what he actually did. Now, that does not excuse me as your host. I have responsibility to be accurate in two areas. One, the information that I bring to the best of my ability as much as possible. And two, accuracy in my predictions. One of them I have absolute control over, and one of them I have little control over, except that on a preponderance of the evidence in front of me, I make my call. So I got this one wrong. But the more I keep reading through the judge's ruling, and it runs about 23 pages, and the more I keep thinking about it, I keep coming to the conclusion I don't understand how he did what he did. And we're going to get into the ruling. Now, I'm also trying to temper my commentary with the acknowledgement that I wanted a certain outcome to happen. And my disappointment in part is because I didn't get what I wanted. But I think I'm more disappointed in the fact that how this judge made his ruling. It's just, to me, the ruling is weird because he kind of has to go through a mental contortion to get to where he is. So we're going to take a look at the ruling, Normally, I'd look at some observations from Twitter, but Twitter apparently on my desktop anyway is absolutely jacked up. Oh, yeah, there's, yeah, 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 that's true too. It's true too. Good evening, Z Highness. Good evening, miscarriage of justice. Yeah, probably. But I tell you what, let's dive right in because, like I say, it's a Friday night, and I know you guys have lots of things you'd love to be doing right now. Um, and then we'll take a look at the ruling. We'll talk about it together. So, without further ado, here's the ruling. Superior Court of Fulton County, State of Georgia, blah, 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 blah. I'll skip through all of that. On January 8th, defendant Roman filed a motion to dismiss the indictment, disqualify Fulton County District Attorney's Office. 8 co-defendants later joined and supplemented the motion, raising additional grounds for disqualification. Among other allegations of disqualifying conduct, defendants contend that the district attorney obtained a personal stake in the prosecution of this case by financially benefiting from her romantic relationship with Special Assistant District Attorney Nathan Wade, whom she hired to lead the prosecution. Moving a little bit further into this thing. As alleged, the claims presented a possible financial conflict of interest for the district attorney. More importantly, the defense's motions and the state's response created a conflict of evidence that could only be resolved through an evidentiary hearing, and one that could not simply be ignored without endangering a criminally accused's constitutional right to procedural due process. After receiving 2.5 days of testimony, during which the defendants were provided an opportunity to subpoena and introduce whatever relevant and material evidence they could muster, the court finds that the defendants failed to meet their burden of proving the district attorney acquired an actual conflict of interest in this case through her personal relationship and recurring travels with her lead prosecutor. The other alleged grounds for disqualification, including forensic misconduct, also are denied. However, the established record now highlights a significant appearance of impropriety that infects the current structure of the prosecution team, an appearance that must be removed through the state's selection of one of 2 options. The defendant's motions are therefore granted in part. Okay. Here's my problem with how this is going down. Okay. And hello, my dear. One of my favorite ladies on the internet is here in the house. So, my dearest, my darling, so happy to have you here. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you over on Rumble. I just was a little busy reading. It's all. Here's my problem. Excuse me. He acknowledges the appearance of a conflict of interest. Says, however, there is no conflict of interest, and ignores, frankly, a let's see, how does he put it? Forensic. Let me find the exact term again. Forensic misconduct. At least in my opinion, he ignores it. And I think that's one of the things that bugs me about this ruling so much is you can't have one without the other. Now, and the other thing that bugs me is how he decides to resolve this. Now, if you guys haven't heard about how this has gone down, the judge basically handed down a ruling that says, okay, we're going to resolve this one of 2 ways. Either A, Fani Willis and her office are going to disqualify themselves from this prosecution and will refer it over to a commission that will then reassign the case. Or B, Nathan Wade is going to come off of the case. But the choice is up to the district attorney's office. Now, wait a minute. Hold on. My first question in that is, why is the judge leaving this up to the district attorney on how to resolve this? Okay. Who's running the court in Fulton County? The judge or the district attorney? Because keep in mind, the defendants are bringing a case to the court and saying, look, you've got to disqualify her on these reasons. Okay, he found he did not have what he felt was sufficient legal grounds to disqualify her. I disagree with that. But laying that aside, to me, the remedy is not up to one of the parties involved. The remedy is up to the judge. He's deferring too much power to the district attorney. And I should have realized this was going to happen the day that Fani Willis got up to testify. And she is just copping an attitude and going on. And the judge just sitting there like, didn't even stop her. Totally let her go. You know. Oh, we'll get into this. Totally, we will get into this. Well, he's allowed to be a judge because he was appointed, and then if he's reelected in May, he'll be a judge again. So, I don't know how many kangaroos are in this courtroom, but I'll tell you what, I almost feel like I'm down in Australia. I don't know about that. No idea. All right, let's get to it. Getting back to the ruling. And I'm going to skip through some of this because no one wants to read legalese all night long. Actual conflict of interest. Our highest courts consistently remind us that prosecutors are held to a unique and exacting professional standard in light of their public responsibility and their power. Every newly minted prosecutor should be installed with the notion that she seeks justice over convictions and that she may strike hard blows but never foul ones. Okay. More importantly, prosecutors are expected to assume a role beyond a mere advocate for one side and must make decisions in the public interest, not their own or personal or political interest. Okay, that's kind of obvious, but all right, he cites case law on that, fine. Disqualification of a prosecutor due to a conflict of interest is thus not a creature of statute so much as is a judicial remedy recognized by our appellate courts since their formation, generally on the grounds of public policy, as the administration of law should be free from all temptation and suspicion so far as human agency is capable of accomplishing that object. Okay, agree with that, no problem. So far, we're good. The Georgia Supreme Court has most recently denoted conflicts of interest and forensic misconduct as two generally recognized grounds for disqualification. Okay. A conflict of interest includes acquiring, quote, a personal interest or stake in the defendant's conviction. Cites Williams, also Black's Law Dictionary, yada, yada. In such circumstances, no showing of prejudice by a defendant is required. Okay. This is so because the prosecutor's duty to the public creates an additional public interest that must remain unconflicted in every criminal case. Okay, all this so far is standard and boilerplate. No problem. I get it. All right. A determination of whether a prosecutor is laboring under a conflict of interest is a fact-driven one. Duh. All right, I get that. In this case, Special Assistant District Attorney Wade's manner of payment is not actionable on its own. Okay, I can agree with that. That's fine. Whenever a private attorney like Wade is paid by the billable hour, a motive exists to extend or prolong the assignment. This, however, is a tension that the legal profession has long accepted. It's also the type of speculative status violation that our courts have regularly denied as insufficient grounds for disqualification, absent solid proof of some other misconduct, or conduct, I should say. Thus, a special assistant district attorney oath of office in combination with the supervision theoretically provided by a neutral and detached DA should generally be sufficient to dispel the appearance of improper incentive. All right, fine. As to the financial allegations, the court makes the following findings. All right, here we go. On November 1st, 2021, District Attorney hired Nathan Wade to serve as the Special Assistant District Attorney and lead the investigation that produced the indictment in this case. The District Attorney considered at least one other option before hiring Wade, extending an offer to former Governor Roy Barnes, who declined. The contract allowed for a $250 hourly rate, relatively low by Metro Atlanta standards, for an attorney with Wade's years of service and contained a ceiling maximum of hours permitted. Under the terms of the first contract, Wade was not to perform more than 60 hours of work per month without written permission. I can think of at least one instance, and y'all back me up on this if I'm wrong. Didn't he have like one solid 24-hour period where he billed? He was working day and night for 24 straight hours? Or am I crazy on that one? But let's get back to it. His contract was renewed on November 15, 2022, and again on June 12, 2023. Between October 22nd and May 23rd, the district attorney and Wade traveled together on 4 occasions that resulted in documentable expenses. All right. The first included an extended trip in October 2022 to Miami and Aruba and a cruise. Wade initially covered expenses for the October 2022 trip, totaling $5,223. Okay. $5,223. Okay. All right, fine. In December, they flew to Miami for another cruise, for which the DA paid $1,394. Okay. While Wade paid passage for the cruise along with other vacation-related expenses totaling $3,684. All right. In March 2023, they traveled to Belize, where Wade covered resort and restaurant expenses in the amount of $3,000. All right. In May, they traveled to Napa Valley, California, where Wade covered airfare, lodging, and Uber rides, which totaled about $2,829. In addition, the two described taking a number of day-long road trips to Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and other parts of Georgia. They also admitted to dining out on multiple occasions and taking turns covering the bill with seemingly full access to Wade's primary credit card statements. The defendants did not produce any evidence of other documentable expenses or gifts, nor were any revealed through testimony. In total, the defendants point to an aggregate documented benefit of, at most, approximately $12,000 to $15,000 in the DA's favor. All right, I don't think that one is too much of a stretch or too hard to do, because I'm just sitting here, just jotting down some basic numbers. And I could, if I had tallied it up real quick, I could probably agree with that assessment of anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000. Now, keep in mind, he's hired in November 2021. Okay. They supposedly start this relationship in 2022. They take all these trips, yada, yada, yada. Matter of fact, let me back this up and I'll get the dates right on this. Hang on. Yeah, October 2022 to May of 2023. Okay. So keep all that in mind. So $12,000 to $15,000 of stuff that he paid for. And this happened from a period of October 2022 to what they say, May of 2023. Okay. Now let's get back to this. The district attorney and Wade testified that these expenditures were not meant as gifts and not designed to benefit the district attorney. Both testified that the DA regularly reimbursed Wade in cash, and if not reimbursed, the DA covered a comparable related expense. For example, the DA testified she reimbursed Wade in cash for the Aruba trip, which she estimated to cost around $2,000, and she, quote, gave him money for both cruises. She further claimed that she reimbursed Wade for the entirety of the Belize trip and that she paid for the Napa Valley excursions. Finally, Wade said that while Wade could have bought meals in 2020, which totaled more than $100, she would regularly pay for the meals. Well, it's probably a typo there, but okay. Now, it's the next paragraph. It's the next paragraph in this that starts making somebody like me absolutely crazy. And before I get to it, hello, John C. McGarvey, the honorable gentleman from South Carolina. I see you over there on Rumble. Yeah, he said, John McGarvey says this judge is a coward. Brother, I don't think you're wrong, but we'll get to that. Now, let's get to that next paragraph, because this is when I start wanting to tear my fedora off my head. Okay. Such a reimbursement practice, paying him in cash, may be unusual and the lack of any documented corroboration understandably concerning. Yet the testimony withstood direct contradiction, was corroborated by other evidence, for example, her payment of airfare for two on the 2022 Miami trip, and was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. What? I gotta read that again. Hang on. And was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. Okay, all right. Maybe I'm missing something here, so y'all hang with me here. However, as the district attorney herself acknowledged, no ledger exists. Other than a, quote, best guesstimate, there is no way to be certain that expenses were split evenly, and the district attorney may well have received a net benefit of several $100s. Despite this, and after considering all the surrounding circumstances, the court finds that the evidence did not establish the district's attorney receipt of a material financial benefit as a result of her decision and engage in a romantic relationship with Wade. Simply put, the defendants have not presented sufficient evidence indicating that the expenses were not, quote, roughly divided evenly, or that the district attorney was, or currently remains, greatly and pecuniarily interested in this prosecution. Nicholas v. Slate, 17 Georgia App at 606. Okay, hold on. I got some problems with this. I got some big problems with this. Okay? First of all, this argument that says there is no way to be certain that the expenses were split completely evenly and the district attorney received a net benefit, despite all this, considering all the surrounding circumstances, finds that the evidence did not establish receipt of a material financial benefit. Hold on, y'all. Here's my problem with this. Okay? She hires him in October or November of 2021. Okay? Specifically to work on this RICO case, of which, by the way, he has no experience. His law partner, Terrence Bradley, will tell you that. Okay? So she hires him then, which means that he's being paid by the district attorney's office, which means either county money, state money, or federal money. But either way, he's getting paid by the district attorney. All right. Now, according to this ruling and other testimony, but let's just leave it to this, simply define it to this ruling. Starting about a year later, Drama Mama and Lover Boy start getting a little more cozy in the office together. So cozy, in fact, that, let's get it on. Oh, baby. Okay. Yeah, they got a thing going. All right. They're taking trips together. All right, fine. Their business, no problem. The total of the trips, at least for his part anyway, just by my rough calculations, 7, 16, 11, 13, 9, 17, 9, 12. Yeah, by my rough West Virginia math, That's about $14,000 worth of trip that he paid for. Now, the crux of all this, the crux of his and Fani's defense is that Fani reimbursed him and paid him in cash. Now, let me ask you guys a question, and I would love to see your response in chat. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask for it. If the situation had been reversed, and let's say that it was Ashley Merchant in the witness chair and Fani Willis asking the questions, and Ashley Merchant had said, why, I simply reimbursed him in cash. Oh, okay. Where'd you keep the cash? I kept it at my house. It's my standard practice to keep a fairly sizable amount of cash at my house. Okay. So you reimbursed him for these trips and various things. Oh, yes, I reimbursed him. Okay. Can you show me any paperwork, documentation? Can you show me anything that demonstrates that you did this? Well, no. Well, where'd the money come from? Well, it's from my blood, sweat, and tears, don't you know? Do you guys think for 1 second that Fani Willis, as a prosecutor, would have accepted the, oh, I'm Ashley Merchant defense, therefore you should believe me? No, she wouldn't have. Fani Willis would have verbally pounded her into the concrete over some kind of crazy idea like that. But because it's Fani Willis, the district attorney of Fulton County, there you go. Heck no, absolutely. My point exactly. If Fani Willis were giving this line of questioning and anybody, Ashley Merchant, Stephen Sado, Donald Trump's attorney, anybody had given her the, well, I'm so-and-so, therefore you should automatically believe me, Fani Willis would have absolutely and appropriately, might I add, appropriately pounded them into the ground verbally over it. And why? Because the witness would not be able to produce any credible evidence to back up their story. We're talking, again, I'll put this up here for everyone's benefit because I'm so technically prowessed, $14,000 of stuff that he paid for over the course of October 22 to May of 2023. She reimburses him in cash, but she can't prove it to anybody. And that's what just blows my mind. Who was it? Who was it here? I think it was Brent. And God love you. I'm glad you're here, brother. I really am. If you want, I'll throw you a link. Just give me the word, and I'll throw you a link and have you come on in because I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. But this is just unbelievable. Yeah, he's defending. McAfee is defending Fani Willis with this ruling. He's not giving an impartial ruling. He's defending her practices as part of the ruling itself. I mean, I want to go back and read this paragraph again because this thing just absolutely just boggles the mind, okay? Such reimbursement may be unusual and the lack of documented corroboration understandably concerning. You think? Really? Understandably concerning. Brother, it's a little more than understandably concerning. It's damned concerning and damn disconcerting, might I add. Yet the testimony withstood direct contradiction. Bullshit. Was corroborated by other evidence. Her payment of airline for, okay, I might give him that. But this line just boggles my mind and was so incredible. Was not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. Excuse me, sir. It is inherently unbelievable. She can't produce any proof to back up her story. Look, I'm not sitting here saying she's got to be like an accountant and have a ledger and say, well, on this date I took cash out of my private stash in this amount and gave it to Nathan Wade for this purpose. I'm not necessarily saying that, but for the love of God, give me something that corroborates your story. But the judge is just accepting it carte blanche as if, oh, well, it's Fani Willis. You know she's got to be telling me the truth. Without one shred of evidence to verify if she's even telling the truth or not. Of course look, if she were here's my thought in the matter. If she were able to produce proof that she had indeed paid him back in cash, for let's say $8,000, okay? $7,000 or $8,000, all right, fine. At that point, they're at least roughly splitting the costs of all these trips. And you can make the argument, all right, a little bit unusual, but not totally unusual. There's, it's kind of a Dutch dating thing. All right, fine. A little unusual. She's paying him in cash, but then again, it's not necessarily too unusual either. But she has not one shred of proof for all this cash, which, by the way, where the hell all the cash come from? Because by her own admission, in the good times, she was keeping upwards of $15,000 in her house. And furthermore, by her own admission, she took cash out of her own campaign funds, which may very well be a violation of Georgia campaign finance law, but let's leave that aside for a moment. She can't produce any records for any of this. And that's my problem. If she had been able to produce any kind of records showing that, of the cash of her own possession, she's roughly splitting the costs of this, then you could legitimately make the argument that she is not receiving a financial benefit from this. Okay? But he's being paid by the district attorney's office. His money, which is ultimately paying for his credit cards, okay? That money that he's getting is coming from services rendered to the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office is paying him for it. And the things he's spending those monies on are taking her on various trips totaling upwards of about $15,000. And she cannot prove to anybody with any evidence or very minuscule amounts of it that she's paying him back so that it's roughly a 50-50 split. Of course she's getting a financial benefit from it. She cannot prove otherwise. Yet the judge, because of who she is just simply taking her at her word. Well, it's not so incredible as to be inherently unbelievable. The hell it's not! You dope. Anyway, let us continue. Dude, I keep mine in a coffee can in the backyard. I grew up truly West Virginian. So, yeah, I know it's a joke. I get it. Yeah, now here's something else that cracked me up during the testimony. Well, it's a black thing. No, it's not. I'm from Appalachia. When I say we keep money in the coffee cans in the backyard, dude, that's not too far from not even too far from the truth. That has been the truth. And not too many generations removed from my age was that stuff going on. But anyway, let's get back to reading some more of this order before I absolutely blow a gasket. Okay. In addition, and much more important, the court finds, based largely on the DA's testimony, that the evidence demonstrated that the financial gain flowing from her relationship with Wade was not a motivating factor on the part of the DA to indict and prosecute the case. Okay. All right. I might give you that one. I got no problem with that necessarily. While a general motive for more income can never be disregarded entirely, the DA was not financially destitute throughout this time or in any great need, as she testified that her salary exceeds $200,000 per year without any indication of excessive expenses or debts. Similarly, the court finds that the defendants have failed to demonstrate that the DA's conduct was impacted or influenced the case to the defendant's detriment. While prejudice is not a required element for disqualification, it is relevant to considerations of due process and the defendant's requested remedy of complete dismissal. And it's a little bit sketchy, one part of that, the part about the court finds the defendants have failed to demonstrate the DA's conduct has impacted or influenced the case to the detriment. With all due respect, Your Honor, yes, it has. Mr. Scott McAfee, judge for Fulton County, do you really honestly expect anybody to believe that now that these facts are out in the court of public opinion, that people are really going to believe that these 18 defendants, one of which is a former president of the United States, who also just happens to be running to try to obtain the office that he once held, do you honestly think anybody is going to believe that her conduct is a reflection of how she will or will not handle herself in this case, and whether or not Donald Trump and others will or will not get impartial justice? I mean, do you really believe that? And do you expect people in Fulton County or the state of Georgia or the United States to not believe that these actions, well, and you're right in one sense, they don't directly, cause a loss of due process, but the argument that says that the conduct has not impacted or influenced the case to the defendant's detriment, whatever. Anyway, let's move on. Defendants argue that while the financial arrangement created an incentive to prolong the case, in fact, there's no indication the DA was interested in delaying anything. Indeed, the record quite to the contrary. Before the relationship came to light, the state requested the trial begin less than 6 months after indictment. Soon thereafter, the state opposed severance of the objecting defendants. Okay, I can agree with that point. I got no problem with that. Without sufficient evidence that the DA acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, the defendant's claims of an actual conflict must be denied. Again, I do not agree with this. The only way that argument works is if she can prove that she paid Nathan Wade back to the tune of about $6,000 or $7,000. She can't do that. Why? Because she said she paid him back in cash, and she's got no records of where the cash came from, and shows no records of the cash going out. Again, I don't expect her to be some kind of like bookkeeping accountant, keeping a ledger on every jot and tittle of her financial life. But this kind of money, given the office that she holds, basic common sense should have told her she needs to keep some kind of record on this, on the off chance that someday her hand ever gets called on it. Especially given the fact that she's engaging in a romantic relationship with a man who's being employed by her office, and they never told anybody. Yeah, delusional nonsense. Absolutely, I agree with every bit of this wholeheartedly. Every bit of it. Anyway, let's get back. There's one last part to this paragraph I want to read, which I think is pretty interesting. This finding is by no means an indication that the court condones this tremendous lapse of judgment or the unprofessional manner of the DA's testimony during the evidentiary hearing. Rather, it is the undersigned's opinion that the Georgia law does not permit the finding of an actual conflict simply for making bad choices, even repeatedly, and it is the trial court's duty to confine itself to the relevant issues and applicable law properly brought before it. All right, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Other forums or sources of authority, such as the General Assembly, the Georgia State Ethics Commission, the State Bar of Georgia, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, or the voters of Fulton County, may offer feedback on any unanswered questions that linger. But those are not the issues determinative to the defendant's motions of an actual conflict. Okay, here I'm going to take a second and bust on this judge, if I haven't done it already. The General Assembly, the Georgia State Ethics Commission, the State Bar of Georgia, the Fulton County Commissioners, or the voters of Fulton County may offer feedback on any unanswered questions that linger, but those are not the issues determinative to the defendant's motions alleging an actual conflict. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Those bodies have all kinds of ability to speak to all kinds of things. Okay? But you also have the ability to speak to it. Now, in one sense, you're absolutely right, Your Honor. You're absolutely right. You can only address questions of law that are brought before you in your courtroom. I don't disagree with that in the slightest. But I also think John McAfee is absolutely right over there on Rumble. The judge, you're being a coward, sir. With all due respect, you are being a coward. You've got in my estimation, a rogue prosecutor in Fani Willis, and you're either too scared of her or too scared of her voters to stand her down. And not even because of this case with Donald Trump. Leave Trump out of this for a second, okay? You've got blatant evidence here of some kind of very weird financial goings on in the DA's office. Okay? And just the appearance of it's bad enough. But it could be even worse than appearance. You had a whistleblower out of her office saying that they were being pressured to misapply federal funds. And Fani forced that person out. So you're going to sit there with a straight face, Your Honor, and tell me that, yep, I can't do any more than what I'm doing. I can only do what the law allows me to do. Uh-huh. Yep. I'm sorry. That's a cop-out. That's an absolute cop-out. And for you to sit there and say, well, all these other bodies, the Georgia, the General Assembly, the State Ethics Commission, the Bar of Georgia, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, they can say stuff, they can address these issues. I can only do what's in front of me. Oh, give me a break, you chicken. You ought to start sprouting feathers for the way you're acting. Clucking around that black robe of yours up there. Ridiculous. Zippy? Yep, you got it. You got it. And thank you for the follow and the like over on Rumble, by the way. John McAfee further says, fun fact, in 1857, Congress banned foreign currencies as legal tender in the U.S. This caused many to bury their foreign currencies in coffee cans and glass jars. See, I knew we West Virginians were doing that for good reason. Can we get some tar for the... let's not get out of hand here. Not get totally out of hand. Yeah. The fact that he's giving her the option for how to resolve this is just ridiculous. I don't know that I'd classify it as he's running over her. She's running over his authority as much as he is ceding it to her. That's the part that blows the mind. Absolutely blows the mind. Now, if your blood pressure's already up over what I've just read, wait till you get a load of this next section, because this is going to make you mad. Appearance of impropriety. This is on page 10. Finding insufficient evidence of an actual conflict of interest does not end the inquiry. Well, there was sufficient evidence of it. You just didn't want to pay attention to it. Our appellate courts have endorsed the application of an appearance of impropriety standard to state prosecutors, even without an explicit finding of an actual conflict. Okay, fine. So there's a second option here. So we go a little bit further into this ruling. The cases cited here have resulted in disqualification, did not hold that an actual conflict is a necessary prerequisite. The state nevertheless argues that the facts presented suggest as much, and while they may do so in some instances, the opinions do not make that finding, and this court cannot ignore the explicit language of the Georgia Supreme Court and multiple opinions from the Georgia Court of Appeals. Further, while Davenport is the first instance this court can find where the exact phrase, quote, appearance of impropriety is used to assess the disqualification of a state prosecutor, the reference to Caesar's wife in Nicholas v. State and the admonition against, quote, all temptation and suspicion in Galden v. State demonstrate the principle has long been endorsed in Georgia law. Now, if you're wondering what the reference to Caesar's wife is, it goes like this. Caesar's wife must be above reproach in all things. In other words, the district attorney is held to a higher standard than any other lawyer in Georgia. Okay? Because they are an officer of the court. It's not just a matter that they are recognized to practice law before the bar of Georgia. They have the ability to try to put people in jail. So their standard of behavior is higher than others. But anyway, moving on. Borrowing from a federal judicial recusal standards, a reasonable person is not an uninformed member of the public with only a passing knowledge of the facts at hand. Okay. The appearance standard that even when no actual conflict exists, a perceived conflict in the reasonable eyes of the public threatens confidence in the legal system itself. When this danger goes uncorrected, it undermines the legitimacy and moral force of our already weakest branch of government. Okay, I don't disagree with that. I'm with you there. That's fine. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This court finds that it can, and indeed must, consider the appearance of impropriety as a basis for a state prosecutor's disqualification, especially in recognition of the critical role that the prosecutor plays in our criminal justice system. One final observation can be gleaned from a careful study of our appellate decisions applying the standard. The remedy can vary. Yeah, hold on to that four-word phrase. The remedy can vary. Unlike an actual conflict, the finding of an appearance of impropriety does not automatically demand disqualification. Ooh, the skids are getting greased, folks. The skids are getting greased. Our Supreme Court has previously analyzed disqualification under an appearance standard in a civil case using a continuum, recognizing that disqualification is not always the appropriate outcome. Then it goes on to quote lengthily from a case known as Blumenfeld v. Borenstein in Georgia. All right. Supreme Court further noted that disqualification due to an appearance of impropriety should rarely occur where there is no danger that the actual trial of the case will be tainted. Again, I see grease going on the skids. Look out. It's about to get real slippery from here. That's all I'm saying. Let me read that again. The Supreme Court further noted that disqualification due to an appearance of impropriety should rarely occur where there is no danger that the actual trial of the case will be tainted. Hold on to that word tainted, because we'll come back to that a little bit further into the ruling. All right. Nor would the finding of an appearance of impropriety on the part of the district attorney herself, in contrast to an actual conflict, necessarily result in the disqualification of the entire Fulton County DA's office. Okay, I can agree with that. I can agree with that. The district attorney in McLaughlin was, quote, absolutely disqualified due to a personal interest in the prosecution. As a result, assistant district attorneys appointed by the DA lacked any authority to proceed. When the appearance of a conflict exists, only the affected prosecutor, be they elected or appointed, is affected. Wait a minute, I must have misread that. No, I didn't misread that. All right, going on. Okay, here's where the rubber starts meeting the road. With these principles in mind, the court finds that the record made at the evidentiary hearing established that the DA's prosecution is encumbered by an appearance of impropriety. All right. You didn't like the first part of this ruling so far? Things are starting to look up here. All right. Let's see what else he's got to say. This appearance is not created by mere status alone, but comes because of a specific conduct and impacts more than a mere, quote, nebulous public interest because it concerns a public prosecutor. Even if the romantic relationship began after Special Assistant District Attorney Wade's initial contract in November of 2021, the DA chose to continue supervising and paying Wade while maintaining such a relationship. Let me find my cursor here. There we go. She further allowed the regular and loose exchange of money. Boy, was it loose, among other things, but I digress. Anyway, this lack of a confirmed financial split creates the possibility and the appearance that the DA benefited, albeit non-materially, from a contract whose award lay solely within her purview and policing. More importantly, were the case allowed to proceed unchanged, the prima facie concerns raised by the defendants would persist. As the DA testified, her relationship with Wade has only cemented after these motions and, quote, is stronger than ever. Wade's patently unpersuasive explanation for the inaccurate interrogatories he submitted in his pending divorce indicates a willingness on his part to wrongly conceal his relationship with the district attorney. As the case moves forward, reasonable members of the public could easily be left to wonder whether the financial exchanges have continued resulting in some form of benefit to the DA, or even whether the romantic relationship has resumed. Put differently, an outsider could reasonably think that the DA is not exercising her independent professional judgment totally free of any uncompromising influences. As long as Wade remains on this case, this necessary perception will persist. All right. Moving on. The testimony introduced, including that of the district attorney and Wade, did not put these concerns to rest. During arguments, defendants largely pivoted from the financial concerns to disproving the testimony of the DA, namely that her romantic relationship actually predated the November 2021 hiring of Wade. On that front, the court makes a few brief observations. First, the court finds it's unable to place any stock in the testimony of Terrence Bradley. His inconsistencies, demeanor, and generally non-responsive answers left far too brittle a foundation upon which to build any conclusions. While prior inconsistent statements can be considered as substantive evidence under Georgia law, Bradley's impeachment by text message did not establish the basis for which he claimed such sweeping knowledge of Wade's personal affairs. All right, now hold on a minute. I have a problem here. This is another one of my problems with this ruling. Okay, if you don't want to acknowledge what Terrence Bradley said on the stand, fine. I will freely admit I found Terrence Bradley's testimony to be aggravating, to be frustrating, to be not forthcoming. Fine. You want to dismiss, you want to say, yeah, he didn't offer anything of substance there, that's fine. The text messages, on the other hand, are a whole different deal. First of all, any information he offered up during those text messages was voluntary. Number two, he didn't dispute anything that Ashley Merchant was shooting to him as far as facts were concerned. Okay? So this whole thing about, well, he didn't really have anything to offer that was substantive, and his answers were far too brittle a foundation upon which to build any conclusions. Well, his testimony may have been, but his text messages weren't. So, yeah. Anyway, Oh, my goodness. In addition, while the testimony of Robin Yearty raised doubts about the state's assertions, it ultimately lacked context and detail. Even after considering the proffered cell phone testimony from defendant Trump, along with the entirety of other evidence, neither side was able to conclusively establish a preponderance of evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. Now, hold on a minute. Now here you're stepping out of the realm of the silly and you're walking into the lands of ridiculous. Robin Yearty, in her testimony, stated this romantic relationship was going on as far back as 2019. Terrence Bradley, in his text messages, more or less confirm what Robin Yearty stated. So you got two individuals whose information match each other. Okay? Now, it's bad enough that you're dismissing, Terrence Bradley. All right, fine. I mean, you may not have liked his testimony, but the text messages stand on their own. But now you've got his text messages backing up Robin Yearty's testimony. So to dismiss both of them out of hand is just, like I said, you're out of the land of the silly and you're into the realm of the ridiculous. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this wouldn't surprise me if it were true either. No, I did not call you silly. I might call you a lot of things, but I will not call you. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's get back to this. Now, this next line, I really wish I would have used this in the thumbnail or the title. And Dave H, who is one of my regulars, had mentioned this in a comment on my video from last night, and I didn't understand what he meant until I finally read it in the decision. But this next line is great. An odor of mendacity remains. Now, I like to think that I have a relatively good command of the English language, okay? However, even I had to go back and look up the word mendacity, okay? And if you're not familiar with what it means, the condition of being mendacious, in simpler language, you're being untruthful, a lie, a falsehood. So basically what the judge is saying, that there is a stench of lying hanging over this whole thing. That's one of the classiest ways. Now, look, I'm not happy with Scott McAfee's ruling in the slightest, okay? But I'll give him this. That is one of the classiest ways I've ever seen done of saying you're a freaking liar and not come out and say you're a freaking liar. But let's get back to what he has to say. The court is not under an obligation to ferret out every instance of potential dishonesty from each witness or defendant ever presented in open court. Yeah, that's true, but then again, you're not under any obligation to ignore it either. Oh, I'm sorry, I digressed. Such an expectation would mean an end to the efficient disposition of criminal and civil proceedings, yet reasonable questions about whether the DA and her hand-selected special assistant district attorney testified untruthfully about the timing of their relationship further underpin the finding of an appearance of impropriety and the need to make proportional efforts to cure it. Ultimately, dismissal of the indictment is not the appropriate remedy to adequately dissipate the financial cloud of impropriety and potential untruthfulness found here. And I don't necessarily even disagree with that statement. I mean, would that have been the practical effect if he would have dismissed Fani, Willis, and Nathan Wade from this? Yeah, that would have been the practical effect of it, but he's right in one sense. Yeah, it would have been the perfect remedy, but he is right in one sense. It's not necessarily even the appropriate remedy. It would have been the practical effect. But anyway, let's continue. It's what he does next that just makes you want to go crazy here. Okay. There has not been a showing that the defendant's due process rights have been violated or the issues involved prejudice the defendants in any way. Now, I will agree with him on that first part, but I absolutely disagree with him on the second, that the issues involved prejudice the defendants in any way. That's crap. That's a cop-out. I'm sorry. Going forward, now that all this stuff is in the public ether and people know about it, you damn well better believe it absolutely prejudices the defendants going forward. But anyway, let's get back to what he has to say. Nor is the disqualification of a constitutional officer necessary when a less drastic and sufficiently remedial option is available. Uh-oh, here it comes. Here it comes. The court therefore concludes that the prosecution in this case cannot proceed, now listen to this, until the state selects one of two options. The district attorney may choose to, 1, step aside along with her whole office and refer the prosecution to the prosecuting attorney's counsel for reassignment. Alternatively, Special Assistant District Attorney Wade can withdraw, allowing the DA, the defendants, and the public to move forward without his presence or remuneration, distracting from and potentially compromising the merits of this case. Exactly. This is madness. You're a judge. You're supposed to hand down a ruling. You're not supposed to defer it to the individual who's on the block here and say, well, it looks like you're pretty guilty of this thing, but you tell me how you want to handle the punishment. You're the one wearing the black robe. Exercise the authority that goes along with it. Okay, you're right. Under the question of appearance of impropriety, all right, yeah, you're allowed a certain amount of latitude. Some things are not automatically called for. I get that. But that doesn't mean you just, check your authority at the door, along with your brains and along with your balls, might I add, and just do nothing and then defer it off to the person whose truthfulness and integrity is on the block here. What the world's the matter with you? Yeah, bless it. Oh, Blue Sky, we're going to get to this. Is coming next. Zippy, glad you were able to join us, my friend. Glad you're able to join us. Ah, goodness. Let me see what's going on over on Rumble. John McGarvey says, is judicial cuckery a thing? I don't know. After reading this ruling, I'm starting to wonder, John. I ain't gonna lie. Good evening, Gypsy. Glad to see you over there. You mean somebody gave me a thumbs down on Rumble? I want that person found and flogged. How dare they? Daggone it. Oh, yeah. The church speech. Oh, we're going to get to that. Because this isn't over yet. I mean, like I said, if your blood pressure's not up already, get ready because it's about to get worse. Last section of this thing. Forensic misconduct. The Georgia Supreme Court also recognized, let me pop this back up here for everybody to be able to see it better. There we go. Also recognized forensic misconduct or improper comment by the state as grounds for disqualification. One example of such forensic misconduct is, quote, expression by the prosecuting attorney of his personal belief in the defendant's guilt. Lists a court case in Georgia, yada, yada, yada. As guidance, the Williams decision instructs that the trial court should, quote, take into consideration whether such remarks were part of a calculated plan evincing a design to prejudice the defendant in the minds of the jurors, or whether such remarks were inadvertent utterances. Okay, fine. The Williams decision also notes that while a prosecutor's comments may be considered improper, they must, quote, be egregiously so to justify disqualification. The court has not located nor been provided with a single additional case exploring the relevant standard for forensic misconduct or an opinion that actually resulted in disqualification under Georgia law. Okay, fair enough. They're relying primarily on the Williams decision. All right, cool. Left unexplored, therefore, is how other examples of forensic misconduct can manifest, such as whether statements that stop short of commenting on the guilt of a defendant can be disqualifying. Nor has it been decided if some showing of prejudice is required, and how a trial court should go about determining whether such prejudice exists. Nor is it clear whether the analysis differs depending upon pretrial posture of the case. Unmooted from precedent, the court feels confined to the boundaries of Williams and restricts the application of the facts found here to a limited holding. Okay, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And Dave, welcome. And I gave you credit for your odor of mendacity. I didn't. Yeah, stinks to high hell. To borrow a line from the movie The Untouchables, this whole thing stinks like a whorehouse at low tide. But getting back to the ruling. The defendants have exhaustively documented every public comment made by the DA concerning this case through their motions and supplemental filings. Many of these have already been addressed through a pretrial challenge made on similar grounds brought by defendants Trump and Latham. Okay. This incorporates and adopts the sound reasoning of Judge McBurney and finds that any comments made by the DA prior to July 31st, 2023 did not amount to disqualifying forensic misconduct. Okay. Similarly, more recent comments describing the charges in the indictment, the procedural posture of the case, the office's conviction rate, personal behind-the-scenes anecdotes are not disqualifying. Okay, don't have a problem with that. This includes the DA's unorthodox decision to make on-the-record comments and authorize members of her staff to do likewise to author's intent of publishing a book. Okay, fine. I might still be able to go with you there. Such decisions may have an ancillary prejudicial effect yet to be realized, but the comments do not rise to the level of disqualification under Williams. Now, keep in mind, the standard that's laid down in this Georgia case of Williams is egregious. Are the comments so egregious that they become prejudicial? Now, here's where the judge smacks her around verbally. The same cannot be so easily said of District Attorney Fani Willis's prepared speech delivered before the congregation of a local Atlanta church on January 14, 2024. In these public and televised comments, the DA complained that a Fulton County commissioner, quote, and so many others questioned her decision to hire Special Assistant District Attorney Wade. When referring to her detractors throughout the speech, she utilized the plural they. And this might be one of those times when pronouns really do become an issue, but I digress with that bad joke. The state argues the speech was not aimed at any of the defendants in this case. Maybe so, but maybe not. Therein lies the danger of public comment by a prosecuting attorney. By including a reference to, quote, so many others on the heels of defendant Roman's motion, which instigated the entire controversy, the DA left the question open for the public to consider. The court finds, after considering the statement as a whole, under all the circumstances surrounding its issuance, that the DA's speech did include defendant Roman and his counsel within its ambit, whether intentional or not. Okay. More at issue, instead of attributing the criticism to a criminal's accused general aversion to being convicted and facing a prison sentence, the district attorney ascribed the effort as motivated by, quote, playing the race card. She went on to frequently refer to SADA Wade as the black man, while her other unchallenged SADAs were labeled one white woman and one white man. The effect of this speech was to cast racial aspersions at an indicted defendant's decision to file this pretrial motion. Now, all this up to now has been sounding okay, but here it comes. Get ready, because here comes the hook. However, the speech did not specifically mention any defendant by name. Although not improvised or inadvertent, it also did not address the merits of the indicted offenses in an effort to move the trial itself to the court of public opinion. nor did it disclose sensitive or confidential evidence yet to be revealed or admitted at trial. In addition, the case is too far removed from the jury selection to establish a permanent taint of the jury pool. As best it can divine under the sole direction of Williams, the court cannot find that this speech crossed the line to the point where the defendants have been denied the opportunity to a fundamentally fair trial, or that it requires the district attorney's disqualification. Although it is largely, but it was still largely improper. Providing this type of public comment creates dangerous waters for the DA to wade into. The time may very well arrive for an order preventing the state from mentioning the case in any public forum or prevent prejudicial pretrial publicity, but that is not the motion presently before the court. The defendant's motions demanding disqualification and dismissal based on forensic misconduct are denied. And then the last part of this goes to question of other grounds. And I'll read a little bit of this. As for the remaining provisions and arguments, the court has not been presented with any authority that such violations, even if proven, amount to an actual conflict of interest or that an appearance of impropriety can apply to any instance of inappropriate or wrongful behavior. In each case applying the appearance standard, the impropriety was connected in some ways to an allegation of potential and previously recognized actual conflict. Conclusion. Whether this case ends in convictions, acquittals, or something in between, the result should be one that instills confidence in the process. A reasonable observer, unburdened by partisan blinders, should believe that the law was impartially applied, that those accused of crimes had a fair opportunity to present their defenses, and that any verdict was based on our criminal justice system's best efforts at ascertaining the truth. Any distractions that detract from these goals, if remedial under the law, should be proportionally addressed. After consideration of the record established on these motions, the court finds the allegations and evidence legally insufficient to support a finding of an actual conflict of interest. However, the appearance of impropriety remains and must be handled as previously outlined before the prosecution can proceed. The defendant's motions are therefore granted in part and denied in part. So ordered this 15th day of March, 2024, Judge Scott McAfee. Oh boy. Like I say, I am severely conflicted over this whole thing. And you guys feel free to pass on, your thoughts on this. But the part that gets me is you claim you can't see an actual conflict of interest, but there's an appearance thereof. And the reason that you can find the appearance thereof is because of all the things you said did not constitute an actual conflict of interest. Huh? What? Seems a little crazy. And then you don't like her speech at the church, but that doesn't necessarily constitute a problem either. And then all the other arguments that were made, you don't find them relevant enough to be able to say, yep, she needs to be disqualified. This ruling is just frustrating. And I'm not frustrated because of the result necessarily. I mean, look, everybody knows I'm supporting Donald Trump for president. I make no bones about that. Okay? And if he's actually guilty of things, then yes, by all means, prove it in a court of law and lock him up appropriately. Okay? But if you're going to bring a case of law against the man, all right, fine, bring a case of law. But don't bring a case of law that's so tainted by a prosecutor that on its face, she looks like she's crooked like a dog's hind leg, has her lover as an employee, and then lie about it to everybody. And then when it's brought to the attention of authorities who could do something about it, they just more or less, lift up one corner of the rug and sweep the whole thing under. Now, see, and I've heard people ask this question all day long. Did the judge put her on a leash? I don't think he did. I really don't. And I'm not trying to black pill here, but my point is this. If he would have absolutely put her in her place that day she got up on the stand, then I might be able to believe the idea that the end result of this is that he's put her on notice. Lady, you try this crap in my courtroom and it gets worse from here. I'm letting you off the hook, but not by very much. I think he's emboldened her. I really do. I think he's absolutely emboldened her. I think she's going to keep pushing it as far as she can get it to go. I mean, look, lay aside whether it's Fani Willis or anybody, Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, Jack Smith, name George Gascon out in California, name the prosecutor, okay? You want, if people want to put a stop to this, there's any number of ways to do it. Number one, if you've got the ability to vote these people out, then by all means move heaven and earth and try and do it. But short of that, the judicial system could rein these people in. In my book, one of the frustrations in part of this ruling is that he had a chance to not just rein her in the short term, but in the long term, send a message to prosecutors all over the state of Georgia. We're not going to tolerate this crap. If we find out you're doing this, there are consequences. And to me, he just passed the buck. I mean, I've said for a long time, ever since 2020, that Georgia, don't let the state of Georgia fool you. Everybody thinks, oh, it's a Republican state. It's got a Republican governor. It's got a Republican legislature. It's got a Republican Secretary of State. Yada yada yada. Don't be fooled by that R in front of their names. It's becoming more and more obvious that state, in certain places, is a sinkhole of corruption. And Fulton County might be worse than anybody even realizes. And I'm sorry, it's not that the D's are corrupt and the R's are white knights or whatever. Baby. That corruption, it messes up everybody, Democrats and Republicans. So yeah, I'm not going to lie. This ruling is just frustrating to me on so many different grounds. So many. Yeah. Oh, well, and that's a good question. Are they going to appeal McAfee's ruling? Or do they let the trial play out, and if they don't get the result they want, then appeal it? If it were me, I'd appeal it right now. I wouldn't even wait. They'd be like, nope, we're going up. Oh, yeah, I agree with this completely. I agree with this. I absolutely agree with this. On a side note, I saw this too, and this is kind of a scary thought. So yeah, this is kind of where I'm at on this whole ruling. Blue Sky says he did pass the buck. It's quite disturbing. Yeah, I love that last line. What are you going to tell your kids? I'll save some of my other thoughts for tomorrow morning. And yes, we are doing Front Porch Brunch. So, but I wanted to get together with you guys and other people who might watch this and just give you some of my initial thoughts. I don't like the ruling, not necessarily because of it was not necessarily because I didn't get the result I wanted, but the mental gymnastics this judge had to do to crank out this 23 pages is just incredible. And by the way, for the record, I'm not the only one who feels this way. We'll get into some responses to this tomorrow. There's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people that have commented, as you might expect, and people far smarter than I am, you know. What time is brunch? Let's see. You're in tech. In your case, you'd be on Central Standard Time. It's 10:30 Eastern. It'd be 9:30 Central. Now, if you're on the very western edge of Texas, and that puts you on Mountain Standard, it would be 8:30 there. But otherwise, it's 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central, 8:30 Mountain. So there you go. Good point. Good point. But yeah, the one comment that I heard, and even though we don't agree on everything politically, I love Jonathan Turley, the legendary law professor from George Washington. He said this ruling is the effect of it is basically like finding two bank robbers in a vault full of money, and instead of arresting and removing both of them, you take one of them to jail and you leave the other one in the vault. And I thought, that's a colorful way of putting it, but I can't disagree with him. I can't disagree at all. So yeah. Yeah, we'll get into some comments about this tomorrow. I'm not going to go over this whole thing the way we did, but I definitely want to give you some responses to it. But I want to get together with you guys tonight and just kind of get my initial thoughts out there. I mean, like I said, I find the ruling frustrating, not because it didn't give me the result I wanted. It's just the tortured process mentally that this judge went through and everything he had to ignore to try to come up with a almost Solomon-like ruling that didn't even get close to invoking the wisdom of Solomon. So yeah. Yeah. Well, that's part of what I'm hoping, is that I am hoping that we start reversing this growth of government. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Blue Sky. But yeah, we're going to be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central. We'll be back talking about a whole bunch of different stories. One of them I definitely want to get into has to do with our favorite Senate Majority Leader, Chucky Schumer. And I think you might know the story that I'm talking about. But yeah, this is going to be really interesting. John McGarvey says, this ruling is so contradictory, it's opened the defense to a slew of options. I'll agree with that. They'll never get an interlocutory appeal heard. True. Anyway, you guys go have a good rest of your Friday night and continue to spread the word about the channel. I am 115 subscribers on YouTube away from 1,000. So y'all keep spreading the word. Hopefully we'll get, more subscribers to this channel. This algorithm cannot ignore me forever. Daggone it. My mouth is too big for that. Anyway, you guys have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central for Front Porch Brunch. Thank you guys for stopping by to listen to me rant for a little while. And I'll be back tomorrow morning to rant some more and have some fun with you guys doing this. Anyway, you guys have a good night.